everybody.
Yo.
Welcome to the Wrestling Through the Years podcast. Another day, another dollar. We're here on a Friday night. I'm Big Dizzle, the D-I-Z, the armchair quarterback. And I am here with the master of fandom, the wrestling encyclopedia himself, my brother Dutchy.
Yo.
And we're the man that puts the E in ECW. Money E. Eric's here, everybody. I think it froze on him.
Eric.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay. Well, you didn't say anything when we said.
Well, it's not his fault. It's I think
Here.
he's just coming in and out a little bit.
Yeah, he's kind of freezing up a little bit.
Maybe leave and come back like Clint did last week. Because it's really
Because you're on a delay right now.
yeah. But all right, we're here for a special episode, and we're here to talk about ECW, and we're here to talk about one man in particular, the legend himself, and someone who unfortunately passed recently. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well,
No.
kind of. Leave and come back. There.
We're here to talk about a legend and Sabu.
Yeah.
Who unfortunately passed away not too long ago.
Mother's Day, actually. Or at least that's when it was announced.
Yes. And it was really sad. He's a legend, and a lot of people are, now you've seen a lot of tribute videos. There's a lot of people, putting up his old matches and stuff, and people are really going back into the career of Sabu, and that's awesome because he was, to me, he's one of the pillars of ECW, and he represents a lot, and I think he's one of those guys that innovator and a trailblazer. I think he made a lot of moves that people use today, and a lot of people kind of took his style in some ways or not.
He was the epitome of ECW.
Yeah, and he was the man, and I enjoyed his work from whatever I've seen, and I've always thought he was pretty good, and he definitely deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame. But what do you got on him?
So there's a lot that I think needs to be talked about as far as his run. No, it's not better. Like ECW, I think, was his best run when it comes to what he was able to do kind of like in the ring, and he really fit ECW style.
Yeah.
He didn't necessarily fit WWE style. TNA, because TNA kind of had a style for him.
Yeah.
And then like WCW, obviously it didn't work. But also because he was a big name in Japan too. And what a lot of people need to remember is he was the nephew of the original Shiek Ed Farhat.
Yeah.
Okay. Shiek got him into the business. And he really did. He succeeded, but he was more known for ECW because, like I said, he could do that style. And he's another one of those guys. He's one of those guys where, like, you hear all this crap talked about. You hear all this stuff talked about guys that miss appearances or no show or whatever. Just take the money and run.
Yeah.
Sabu was one of those guys, but Sabu was so well liked, he got away with it.
Yeah. No one ever really trashes him.
Yeah.
And, which is, he also seemed like one of the sweetest guys on earth, too. He seemed like a very nice guy.
Yeah.
He seemed like a really cool dude. And he did have an illustrious career with a lot of good shit. And that's what people... Now, it's cool seeing all of his old stuff kind of resurface because a lot of people, I think, forgot about him a little bit. And he was in the news last month with the whole Joey Janela thing.
Right, because that was, I think, his retirement match.
Yeah, that was his last match, and that went the way it went. And, there's been a lot of reports coming out of that. People are pissed at Janela, and apparently they, but we don't want to talk about that too much. But, yeah, apparently that's some shady stuff.
It is, and it's not necessarily surprising because GCW is one of those promotions to where like anything goes, and all that. They try to be ECW. They try to be basically the hardcore porn of ECW.
Yeah.
Almost like CZW, Combat Zone Wrestling. But the difference between GCW and CZW is GCW, there actually is good wrestling on there. CZW, you usually only get paid in sexually transmitted diseases.
Yeah.
And so, like, Sabu doing the thing for Game Changer, it's
a lot better so far.
Yeah.
Yep.
So him doing the thing for Game Changer, because Game Changer is where like JBL started doing stuff for GCW. Jeff Jarrett did. Like a lot of these guys were doing stuff for GCW because Joey Janela's Spring Break is one of the bigger independent events of WrestleMania weekend.
Yeah, it's a pretty big show.
So, and usually, obviously, Joey Janela's in the main event. I mean, he usually puts on stinkers. A couple of years ago, Marty Jannetty.
They wrestled?
Yeah.
That's ass.
So, it actually was. So, like, but it's always the big attraction, the big name.
Yeah, and him and Sabu and the whole thing about them giving him kratom, I guess, which is a fucking crazy drug, and to get through the match. And I don't really want his tribute episode or us because we're here to celebrate Sabu. And none of that is really bad on Sabu anyway. Joey Janela looks like a complete piece. And but I don't know if he was just talking shit or who knows with those guys. But Sabu, he went out as a legend. And jumped into barbed wire one more time for folks.
Yeah.
And when we talk about his career, barbed wire, you know, even though he only had one barbed wire match in ECW, which is crazy. You would think he had like 10.
Well, the funny thing about that, and this is what a lot of people don't, and Paul Heyman's talked about this, the match he had with Terry Funk at that
Born to be Wired.
Born Wired, yep.
Which we actually had the videotape for that for a while, by the way.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, somebody I used to work with in the Newfane School District actually had the tape. Let me borrow it. I never gave it back to him.
There you go.
So that match, like Sabu was not supposed to win.
Yeah.
But Terry Funk got so tangled up in the barbed wire that if they tried to move him out of it, like he was starting to wiggle and the barbed wire was starting to cut him. And it was like wrapped around his throat and all that to where they're just like, okay, like the referee's just like pin.
Yeah, that's the only thing. That match in its own right is a great match.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal match. The ending's a little weird because of that.
Yeah,
but it's still kind of crazy and cool to see.
Yeah, because Terry Funk would not keep his shoulders down.
Yeah.
Like Terry Funk's just like, that's not the finish. That's not the finish.
And they're all tied up in the barbed wire together. That shit was crazy.
Yeah, but it's just like, dude, we have to cut you out of it.
Yeah.
Or else you're gonna lose a fucking artery.
Yeah.
So
that was brutal.
And Shane Douglas is getting the title next week anyway.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna do that.
That shit was crazy, and he because he did that in FMW, right?
Yeah,
he did some barbed wire matches, and he was very big there. And
he won in TNA.
Yeah. Oh, wasn't who did he work?
Abyss.
It was Abyss, right?
Yeah, I'm watching it right now.
That was a great match too. Hell yeah, that was a great match in its own right.
Yep.
But barbed wire isn't the only element to his character. I mean, let's get right into it and just talk some Sabu. As far as current stuff, this was a good week.
It was a good week. Saturday night's main event tomorrow night.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Gonna be interesting. Battleground running head to head with NXT, I believe, or Battleground is NXT. Battleground running head to head with Double or Nothing this Sunday. So basically, you have Will Ospreay versus Hangman Page in the Owen Hart men's final, main eventing Double or Nothing, versus Trick Williams versus Joe Hendry for the NXT title, headlining Battleground.
Yeah,
I know which one I'm watching.
Well, I know which. I know which one's free with a Peacock subscription, and I know
Well,
which
exactly.
one's $50.
Yes. So again, I know which one I'm
It's a
watching.
little unfair and and that shows. I've been talking, and a lot of people have. I'm not the first one that brought it up, but a lot of people have said that Triple H and WWE have been doing these little things just to poke at AEW a little bit, like kind of securing like AAA and certain stuff. Like, oh, you're going to work with CML, MLL, or CMML.
Yeah.
I always fuck that up. And we're going to take AAA. We're going to buy AAA. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to do the ID program and secure the independent scene and take it away from you. We're going to partnership with TNA so you can't work with them again.
We have evolved.
We're going to do all these little things so you can't get new talent and you can only get old WWE guys. Like and we're going to put on a show on a free platform as long as you have Peacock. If you played the $9.90 or whatever it is now, if you pay,
I think I got charged $15.
If you got charged $15. Then that's more. That's a lot for a wrestling fan. If you're going casual, like I want to watch some wrestling tonight, I have Peacock. I might as well watch this instead of spend $50 on the AEW paper. That's kind of an underhanded tactic.
Which, by the way, wrestling pay-per-views have not been 3-hour wrestling pay-per-views have not been $15 since the mid 90s.
Yeah.
Or actually, I think even since the early 90s, because I think WCW Bash at the Beach 96.
I fucking rammed that shit up.
Yeah. Bash at the Beach 96 was like $30 because I remember mom and dad thinking about ordering it. Found out it was $30. Dad's like, no, we're going to watch Braveheart instead. I said, no.
We're watching Braveheart.
Yeah. I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I don't need to watch TV. And then like I wanted to watch WCW main event, but I couldn't get permission until main event was like 3 minutes from being over. Then I got told I could watch it. Parents to a kid that had to ask to watch wrestling really sucked.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the point is that like now that like you can get an entire subscription service and you can watch everything on Peacock for $15 a month.
Yeah.
And it's not even just wrestling. Like you have all sorts of stuff, like cartoon stuff for Eric and I for the cartoon show.
Yes.
Which I'll fully plug later. Also too,
what is the matchup tomorrow though?
Batman the Animated Series versus SpongeBob.
Eric, if you fuck this up,
we're on the verge of being canceled. Like the corporate office is going to take us out.
I mean,
you don't have to worry about me, Daniel. I hate
not
SpongeBob.
Being a fan of SpongeBob, if one of the best written animated series of all time loses to a cartoon, that's gonna suck. That's gonna suck for the industry. All right?
You don't have to worry about me.
Yeah,
I hate SpongeBob. So
no, and fun cartoons like SpongeBob aren't bad, but Batman was written so well.
Yeah, exactly. Again, more on that later. But but there's so much you can watch on Peacock because you have all the NBC stuff. You have other NBC affiliates on there. All the sports stuff. So you get all that for $15 a month, and all the old WWE library and all the libraries that they own. And instead of paying $50 on Amazon Prime or Triller or whatever to watch one AEW pay-per-view.
Yeah,
That's
a big investment, and that's why I like when I said it's not underhanded, but it's smart business for them to put out. Maybe it's convenient, maybe it's not, but all right, we're gonna do a show on something that's kind of cheaper. You don't have to spend as much money, and you got to spend $50 for this other thing if you want this other. If you want this other product.
And by the way,
smart.
The card for Battleground, like not only do you have Joe Hendry and Trick Williams, which I think is going to be fantastic, Jordan Grace and Stephanie Vicaire, okay, for the women's title.
That's why they don't want it to be competitive, but I don't blame Tony for thinking that the other side's the Antichrist. I really don't.
Well, because if you think about it, it's like they are basic. All right, so
they really go at him, and then whenever he says something, it's like you're bitter.
So follow me here. So let's say you have a mom and pop pizza shop right here on the corner of for anybody that's not that doesn't live here in this area, just bear with me. On the corner of Welsh and North Wales Road.
Right.
I don't even think that that's a thing, but or on the corner of Welsh and Stump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on the so you have it right there on the corner. So if you go on the other side, and let's just say a Papa John's opened up like right on the other side of the right across the street.
Yeah.
Okay. Papa John's is a huge franchise.
Yes.
This mom and pop pizza shop is something that is a family business that a family, they get 10 people a day in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Papa John's, you have orders going every 10 seconds.
Yes. It's just like I watched a movie with Michael Keaton not too long ago, The Founder, and Ray Kroc, which is based on a true story, bought the McDonald's brothers out of McDonald's, and then he owned it, but he let them keep their original location, but he made them change the name, and then he opened up a McDonald's right across the street. It's that type of business. And I think, Vince isn't there anymore, but Vince and Ray Kroc, I mean, that's the same type of business.
Yeah.
It's a cutthroat, and it's a strategy, and you're in it to win this bitch. So sometimes that's just how it goes. I'm not faulting the WWE for it at all. I'm just stating it as a fact.
I'm not either.
And I'm
It's
stating
smart.
that I don't blame Tony for being as competitive as he is with it. Because if I was him, I'd be like, oh, they're really coming at me with these little, I can't get independent people anymore. I can't pick anybody from TNA. I can't do this. I can't do that. They're really starting to lock shit up.
I think the only independent company you can get from is MOW.
But if you want to dominate an industry, that's how you do it. And
Yeah.
WWE's always dominated the industry, besides for a brief period in 97 and 96.
Yeah. So they're not, what they're doing is not illegal.
No.
Okay.
It's good business.
It's good business. You can kind of say, oh, it's immoral, but it's basically, it's kind of the nicer version of what Vince did to Vern back in the 80s.
Yeah, and if you want to go to war, that's what you do. It's just like with movies. Why do Ants and Bugs Life come out in the same fucking year? Both two bug movies from different companies, because one of the fucking companies like, I'm going to get it before you, so your movie's going to look shitty. That's how business works. When you got two competing things, you don't think Coke and Pepsi go at it? That's how it is.
Which, by the way, Ants and Bugs Life, we actually watched Ants first, because Bugs Life we actually saw in the theater.
Yeah, which one came out first? I forgot. Did DreamWorks beat them?
I think they did, because I think it was we saw Ants on video.
I know which one was a bigger hit.
And we saw Bugs Life in the theater.
Yeah, Bugs Life was huge.
So, it was
Big
fan.
movie.
I actually did a report on what's the name? Character's name, Flick or Flint or something.
Oh, it's been so long.
Okay,
It sounds.
but I did so we were big in 7th grade. We were reading The Outsiders, and we had to do this project. It was this big portfolio project, and you had to do all sorts of reports on it. And one of the things that had to be included in the portfolio was a report on a television or movie character that was considered an outsider.
Yeah.
Now, you could not use Steve Urkel or Screech Powers, from Family Matters and Saved by the Bell. You had to come up with a different character. And I had no idea who to come up with. I almost actually wrote it on Archie Bunker, because I figured he's an outsider because he's a racist. So, but then.
Yeah, but at the time that he was doing it, people were liking it.
Yeah.
Which isn't right.
Yeah, exactly.
At the time.
But I remember, I think it was Mom saying, we just watched A Bug's Life. I said, yeah. She goes, the character, Flick or Flint or whatever the hell his name was, he was an outsider. Why don't you write it on him?
That's a good
All right.
suggestion.
So I did. I'm kind of giving Mom her flowers now after I pissed her off on the phone.
Well, there you go. Shout out.
So I wrote the
I'm
report.
sure she appreciates it.
I don't even know if she's listening.
She might be.
If we make that into a short, she'll definitely see it. So I wrote the report, and I think I got a pretty good grade on it. because that was like one of the things I actually tried hard at, and then I realized I hate school, so I quit trying hard.
Good job, Doug.
Thank you. At the quit trying hard part because I hate school.
No, getting a good grade.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, no. So like that's like the whole thing. Like my point, which I think I was trying to make, was like, you know, Tony Khan might feel like an outsider right now because he's not.
Yeah. But business is business.
Yeah.
He's got to find a way to take over that business.
Yeah, he's got to find a way. Put on a good pay-per-view this weekend.
Yeah. And they've had a lot of good pay-per-views. But hopefully he can really lock the game up. And I want a number 2 that's very strong, and I want a new Monday Night War, damn it. I want it. I like there's enough room. This thing's hot again. Let's make it 2. Why not?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
I love WWE. I'll always love WWE, and I started out loving WWE. WCW is my favorite era, that NWO era, but WWE is what I grew up on. I'll always love it.
Exactly.
But I'd love for a number 2. But let's get into Sabu, who not a WWE guy, really. I mean, he had his run, and unfortunately, the run came when he was old and beat up, and that sucks because he is the man, and he had a top run there in him. But he just, by the time he got there, he never really got to, you know, execute. And they booked him shitty. But because they didn't want him to do his stuff and they wanted him to, like, hop on the mic and stuff. And he didn't really have to do that much.
He didn't feel comfortable being on the mic. He's not a promo guy.
When you talk about some guys, WWE tries to sell you on the whole, you need to be the total package, pal. You have to have everything. You have to be able to talk. You have to be able to work. You have to be able, and yes, to an extent, that does make the perfect, you know, wrestler. And it does really help when you can do all those things. But Paul Heyman, and the reason he's the genius he is, he's like, oh, if you're just really good at this one thing and you're not good at this other thing, we'll just hide this and make a really good job of hiding it because we're a show and that's what you do in entertainment. And we're going to really fucking push your strengths. And that's like, that was Paul Heyman's genius. And everyone's taught, it's been talked about ad nauseum. Hide the weaknesses, fucking show the strengths. And Sabu is a perfect case of that, is he never hopped on the mic. He never had to talk. And the fact that he was silent added to the character, and it made it work more. And he would just do the ruthless shit in the ring. And that the whole gimmick, and especially the starting out gimmick of coming in on the stretcher and the whole like Hannibal Lecter thing. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But like that was cool. And then unleashing him, and then after he wins the match, since there wasn't enough carnage, he has to get out a table and moonsault himself through the table. And then if the table doesn't break, he does it again. Like it's an unhinged character, and it really works. And for someone that's not the biggest guy, but he's flying around and his body's a weapon, and he had a special style to him that I think has been mimicked since by a lot of people. I think a lot of people stole his shit. Which, I mean, you borrow and that's what you do in wrestling sometimes. But I think he's an innovator. I think he's a trailblazer. And I think he's one of those. Did he, like, there is some, you know, flaws there. There is, because when you're jumping, when you're like I watched the Fall Brawl 03 match with him, AJ, and Teddy Hart, which is fucking, not Fall Brawl, Ballpark Brawl. My bad. It wasn't WCW. Ballpark Brawl 3. And he literally, at the end of it, there's like Teddy's on a table on the outside, and the ladder's on its side like this. It's not like he's running up the ladder's on its side with like the two like rugs like kind of like stuck together, and he runs, steps on that, and tries to jump off that over. And then because that is not a stable thing to jump off of, he kind of like, you know, runs into the ropes, hits the ropes, and then jumps over. Teddy gets out of the way and he falls through the table. He still crashes through the table. But you did get a couple of, I don't really like to say botch that much, because these guys work so hard, and, you know, saying botches and mistakes and stuff. Sometimes, you know, he did have a bit of a reckless style where shit would not come across how it's supposed. Sometimes he would hit it, sometimes he wouldn't. Yep. But when you're flying with chairs and you're doing the wild shit he is, that comes with the fucking territory. And we talked about the respect that he has earlier a little bit. You touched on it.
Yeah.
But the respect also bled through the fans because he could do all that even if he messed up. And that ECW audience loved to tell you when you messed up. Sabu hardly ever got the "you fucked up" chance. He hardly ever got it.
Right.
It might have been like a little like gasp or something, but he never got "you fucked up," because they saw the heart and soul that he was putting in it, and they saw he was coming off the top rope with a fucking chair. Yeah, the chair might fall or he might land in a weird way. Like that shit happens. It comes with the territory. He's doing shit that nobody did, and that is the definition of an innovator.
Well, and
that's just my opening spiel. But
right. Well, let me tell you about a botch in a match, and this is when he was in WCW, and we've reviewed it back on our Blog Talk days. Halloween Havoc 95, he wrestled Mr. JL, Jerry Lynn under a mask.
Yes. Which the WCW run was so underutilized for both men.
Now, they were in Detroit. Detroit is where the Sheik grew up. You know, we talked about it earlier. The Sheik, Sabu's uncle, Eddie Farhat. So they figured, okay, Sabu's going to get a reaction if we bring the Sheik out. Because Sheik was invited to the show. And I think Sabu even asked, is like, can I bring him out with me?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, sure. You know, get a pop. And Sheik has always been known for throwing the fire. Well, Sheik decided, okay, I'm going to throw the fire at JL. Jerry Lynn had a mask that had eye covers on it. So he wasn't going to get burned. So Sheik, realizing when he goes for the fire, he's going to throw it at the guy. He's like, oh, shit, this guy's wearing a mask. I'm not going to be able to get him in the face. So he throws it at Jerry's chest. And I'm just like, okay, Sheik's getting older. So that's a pass. I mean, and it was a decent match, too, for being like a 3-minute match.
It was very good.
But, you know, we talked about...
They didn't get a lot of time. His WCW run was the run that it's like, oh, they didn't get him and they didn't want to get him.
Well, and that's the thing. If you think about it...
He didn't have much time there either.
He got fired from WCW, or from ECW back in the summer of 95 because he double booked himself. Which, by the way, it happens.
And then Heyman turned the fans on him.
Yeah. Heyman turned the fans on him. He's like, oh, the fans fired Sabu. I didn't. It's like, well, you talked enough shit.
Yeah, you went out to the ring and said, this guy's an asshole that fucking let you down. And like all this shit.
Yeah.
And buried his ass.
So
ECW fans loved Heyman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So baked potatoes are pretty good, are pretty common out here.
And they still love Sabu to this day.
Yeah.
They got over that.
Yes. So he double books himself in Japan. Now, by the way, if you double book yourself.
Shit, I said something about Heyman and I freeze up.
He's controlling the game.
Yeah. So you were doing good for a while too, Eric. Now you're back, kind of.
I know.
It's all right.
So anyway, so if you double book yourself, you usually keep the booking that makes you the most money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes people...
Unless it's a loyalty thing.
Yeah. Now, sometimes people will also go with, okay, I booked myself here first, so I got to go here first.
Yes.
Sabu was making a lot more money in Japan than he was in ECW. ECW, he was getting paid $10 and maybe a double cheeseburger.
Yeah, or nothing.
Yeah. So that's where you go to Japan. Well, Heyman wasn't happy about that. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to, and that's why he fired him. But then he had such a horrible time in ECW. He kind of begged to come back, and there he is.
Yeah.
So.
But Sabu, and of course his best work is in ECW, and that's where everybody enjoys him and stuff. But his early FMW, of course, he was great there.
Yes.
And he did have a couple good... Seeing him wrestle Rey Mysterio in WWE was fun.
Yeah.
Should it have ended in a DQ at One Night Stand? No. Because that is completely against ECW. But it was fun seeing those two go at it.
Well, and I'll tell you, too...
Or was it a count-out?
No, it was a stoppage.
Oh, okay.
It was a stoppage because Sabu DDT'd him through a table. I'll tell you another cool thing back in '93, and this got Sean Waltman hired to WWF.
Yeah.
And I was telling you about it earlier, and I was halfway through the story, and you're like, dude, it's 6:45, save it for the show. Like 6:45 in the morning. So he's wrestling Lightning Kid, Sean Waltman, at a show. I forgot what it was, an independent show. It might have actually been like one of the earlier
I think it was something for Coraluzzo.
yeah, Dennis Coraluzzo, who was an NWA board member.
Yeah.
And they had this 23-minute kick-ass match. Sergeant Slaughter happened to see the tape because Scott Hall had been trying to get Waltman hired.
Yeah, that was his boy.
Well, they didn't even really know each other, but Scott Hall used to watch Global.
Oh, and he liked him on there?
And he liked him on there. And like he kept asking Sergeant, he's like, well, what about the Lightning Kid? He's not doing anything for Global anymore. Why don't we hire him?
And by the way, folks, this is one of those matches, if you can find it, watch it.
Yeah.
Because that is one of like classic Sabu. And you can see why. I'm going to let you finish your story, but you can see why things go the way they go. Because even though like he's skinny there, this is when Kid really shows off that what he can do.
Yes.
Both of these guys, you know, not the biggest guys, but an amazing fucking match.
Right. And so they have this match. So Sarge is sent a tape and he watches it and he goes to Vince. He goes, watch this. What am I watching, pal? And he goes, we need to bring in this kid, Lightning Kid, Waltman. And so they brought him in, and it was one of those, it was kind of, you know, the Cactus Jack treatment from a couple of years earlier in WCW. They didn't necessarily hire him. They let Waltman get over with the crowd before they officially hired him. But it was that match with Sabu that got Slaughter to be like, we might have something here.
Yeah, because 1, 2, 3 Kid did not have the look that Vince was looking for. Especially,
nah, he was like, oh, by the way, he was also only 21 years old.
Yeah, but boy, could he go in the ring. And he is another, like, kind of trailblazer. And so those two fucking lit the roof off the place.
Yeah.
And it was a really good showing for both of them. And
yeah.
Watching that match, you can see why Kid got hired.
Yeah, exactly. Now, obviously, it didn't happen for Sabu, but he didn't fit the mold. But he did fit the mold, obviously, in ECW. And like I was saying earlier, and this is a personal story for me. And Eric, you were actually
I was gonna mention this later, but if you're mentioning it now, then
yeah. So anyway, we're at a convention.
After, bro. Call you after.
Yeah. We're at a convention in 2015 in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and it's called.
That long? Wow.
Yeah, the convention was called November to Remember, which, by the way, you know, obviously it's in outer Philadelphia, so it's a ECW type event.
Yes, sir.
And Sabu was called to kind of be like a last minute person because they had like this whole list of people that were going to be on this thing. Bobby Lashley had to cancel because his promoter's mother died. Boogeyman had to cancel at the very last minute because Vince McMahon said, I need you to do something else. So Bud Carson, who owned this place, the Pro Wrestling World, which was a wrestling memorabilia store / museum, they he called Sabu because Sabu's a friend of his and said, hey, I need you to be here. So he's okay. Now Sabu was hanging with the Genie at the time, that Melissa Coates, who, by the way, was on the Backlash show last week that we reviewed, and she got attacked by Chris Masters. Well, they're scheduled to be at this signing, and the signing started at like 11, and Sabu's not there. And everybody's just like, well, where's Sabu? Like, because now people are just like, all right, well, Bobby Lashley got taken from us. Boogeyman got taken from us. We need Sabu. Because it's either you see Sabu, like they come to see Sabu, but you also had the Powers of Pain and Christy Hemme and a couple other girls there.
Yeah,
All right, Eric actually got the pleasure of meeting Christy Hemme.
Yeah, I took a picture. I think I still have it.
Yeah. I got the pleasure of meeting Warlord and the Barbarian.
Equal.
So we go to anyway, so I asked one of the workers. I said, "Where the hell's Sabu?" And he's just like, "I hear all the time that Sabu always does this." And we're like, "Okay, well, can't somebody call and get him here?" It's like, "Well, when he gets here, he's going to smell like weed." So we leave. Eric and I and Sharon leave, and I think Mindy was with us as well. We leave, and then I see pictures on Facebook, on Bud Carson's Pro Wrestling World Facebook page. Thank you to my good friend Sabu and his genie, Melissa Coates, for being here today. I really appreciate it. It was last minute. And it's just like, motherfucker, he was 3 hours late. I was there till fucking 2:00. And that motherfucker wasn't there. But that just goes to show my point earlier. It's just like he could no show, he could be late, but everybody still loved him. To where like if fucking like Brutus Beefcake did that, if he showed up later, he no-showed, he's on a fucking blacklist.
Yeah.
He's like never, he'd be on a poster saying never book this motherfucker again. Sabu does this, and I'm not knocking him, but Sabu does this. It's like, it's okay. It's just, it's Sabu just being him.
Yeah.
There's just some people that you can.
And like I said, he always seemed like a class act, and like his heart was in the right place. So, sometimes shit happens, and you can't make your
and the thing is that like when Heyman would fuck people over, it would be the same thing with Heyman. Like he'd fuck somebody over, and they'd still talk about him like he's the greatest guy in the world.
I don't know though. A lot of like especially nowadays, now that he's lauded as the genius that he is, but not the genius businessman. And that doesn't get talked about that much, but you can, the ECW originals are still kind of like, even Sabu, like a few years ago, is on record being like, fuck that guy. Like, he fucking, karma's going to get him. Like, because he is one of the biggest geniuses in pro wrestling, but as far as a businessman, he was never there, and he could never pay his guys, and the bounce checks, you always hear about it. And like you had your loyal soldiers, but a lot of those guys were working for free. And when you think of the ECW style and what they're doing that for free is insane. So he had a loyal army, and a lot of those guys now, like I think even Raven will probably be like, yeah, I mean, smart guy, but he fucking asshole. Like he burned a lot of people, and then he went to WWE when the company was like, see you guys, I got a job. And I know he helped people too, but he's like seen a lot of talent, and he's gotten a lot, like he's done a lot of good for the industry, so it does outweigh that bad. But there is that too, and there is a couple of those guys that are still like, hey man, it's kind of fucked me.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, this is a WWE match that I feel like is actually one of Sabu's best. And I'm not talking about the Cena match. I'm actually talking about a match that was on WWE CW.
What was it?
Oh.
It was an Extreme Rules match. It was RVD and Sabu, and you might hit me, against Test and Mike Knox. Extreme Rules, because they didn't call it hardcore anymore, but Extreme Rules. And this was basically Test and Mike Knox were on this roll. They kept beating Tommy Dreamer and Sandman. Except for, Tommy Dreamer and Sandman finally got a win. Of course, Mike Knox took the fall because Test was being protected, even though he wasn't that great either. But it was an Extreme Rules match, and it was fucking fantastic. And this was technically the last time Test and Mike Knox ever teamed together, because Test is just like, all right, Mike Knox's push is done, but let's continue mine. So fuck him, and I'm going to go on my own.
Yeah.
But it was like, that was probably one of Sabu's better matches.
Yeah, it was a good one. And Didn't he work Big Show on an episode of WEC?
He worked Big Show at that SummerSlam pay-per-view because RVD, RVD got in trouble. He got pulled over, he got busted.
Yeah, but who was he next to?
Sabu. but that goes, well, there's two ways you can look at that, okay? There's two ways you can look at that because Sabu ended up getting RVD's spot. Now, he didn't win the title or anything, but there's two ways to look at that. One is my point earlier about Sabu just being that lovable guy who, even when he screws up, they still love him. Or two, the ECW roster just fucking sucked.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a little bit of both.
Like, and no disrespect, kind of, for guys like Tommy Dreamer and Sandman and Balls Mahoney. And, if Kurt would have stayed off the Percocet, I'm sure he would have been in that spot.
All right. Be nice to him.
But he looks like what I'm going to look like in 20 years. Except for I got a lot more flab.
I fucking love Kurt Angle.
Yeah. Oh, I do too. I'm just saying, I'm just stating.
I know you're just
fact.
making jokes.
But like, there wasn't really a lot of guys. So it had to be Sabu because Punk wasn't ready yet. Balls Mahoney sure as fuck wasn't going to work title matches against.
Not at the time. He was hosting strip poker.
Yeah. And Axel Rotten, like they hired Axel Rotten to be part of WWE ECW, but then because Axel Rotten was kind of big at the time, Vince looked at him and just like, I have too many fat guys, pal. You're out.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, ECW was never going to work in WWE. That's a whole, and it was, I mean, I'm glad that they tried, I guess. And it was a cool little NXT before NXT, but it was, it was one of those things that was never really going to work because you couldn't be extreme anymore. So there's really no reason to have it. And
besides one night stand, the 2-way night.
Yeah, it was a cool.
Well, 2005 was better than 2006.
Yeah, but the main event carries 2006.
Yeah,
because Cena and RVD and
that crowd was
that shit was
hated.
So, that was a lot of fun.
That was fun,
and Edge became a hero.
Yeah, I just find it funny how like, especially like one of the bigger matches, which was Terry Funk and Tommy Dreamer versus Edge and McFoley, and then they had to turn it into a 6-person, just so somebody, because Edge and McFoley were not going to lose that match.
Yeah.
All right. Edge was definitely not going to lose that match, but I don't know what Tommy Dreamer's issue was with taking the fall. I think Terry Funk said, I'm not Pritchard. I'm not taking a goddamn fall.
It's pretty good Funk.
Well, in order for it to be a good Funk, that's why I have to do the Pritchard, because that's how I know how to start it off. But like, so they had to have Buell in there because it's just like, all right, well, somebody's got to fucking take the fall, and we're gonna job Tommy out too much when we start ECW. And Terry Funk, would rather go home, and it's like, if we make Terry take the fall, he's gonna go home and take care of his sick horse.
Yeah. But let me ask a question.
Sure.
Who is Sabu's greatest rival? What's his best feud?
I say RVD.
Taz.
I think those are the top two choices.
Yeah.
I think those are the top two.
I think he had the best chemistry of RVD because they were tag team champions.
That's the thing. I agree with that because I think they were almost better as partners.
Yes.
But I do. So I would be inclined to agree with Doug because him and Taz had that big fight feel that ECW kind of needed. And it always felt like a spectacle and barely legal. One of the reasons that was such a big deal was because it was building up to that match. And
they didn't touch each other for a year.
And their match was it Living Dangerously 99? Which one was it 99?
The pay-per-view, the March pay-per-view was Living Dangerously, right?
Yeah. I don't know. But
because that's what I think it was. It was their March pay-per-view.
They had a main event in 99. that was fucking amazing, and for the title. I don't know if it was for the title, but it was fucking amazing.
It was the unification. It was the ECW title versus the FTW title.
Yeah, and that was a way better match than the Barely Legal match.
Yeah,
but both matches were pretty epic in scale. But him and RVD, I agree with Eric, they had the best chemistry because they worked well as a team, and I liked them with Fonzie, and I like Fonzie's one of the most annoying managers of all time. I do like those two with Fonzie. And then I like those two against each other as well. I thought they had great matches.
Well, what was the pay-per-view? Or not even, I don't even think it was a pay-per-view. I think it was just a special event that got released on home video. They did a match, but they had to it was a rematch of a show like a couple months earlier. Because didn't they break the ring at one of the shows? Like they were the match that broke the ring, and while they had to put the ring back together, that's when they sent Kimona out to do her striptease, and Bubba Dudley's trying to touch her through the fucking. They were the ones that broke the ring, right?
Yeah,
they might have been. Yeah,
I believe so.
So like, but yeah, and then like they had the rematch a couple months later, and I think that was like because RVD from like 97 to 2000 didn't lose a lot. Matter of fact, he didn't lose at all because he was like Mr. Pay-Per-View.
Yeah, they booked him pretty hot.
Yeah.
But he was the man. And for never winning the world title.
Yeah, I was going to say, he never won the world title.
He never won it. Sabu did. Sabu's a 2-time champion, right? Or 3-time?
3, I think. Because again, he won the title from Terry Funk, even though he wasn't supposed, because Shane Douglas was going to get the title.
Yeah.
But again, because they had to, save Terry Funk's life. Which, by the way, fucking, if I'm fucking trapped in barbed wire and they're basically saying, Terry, let's go, or if they're saying, Doug, come on, let's go home because we have to cut you out of this fucking thing. All right. And if, by the way, if you move, you're gonna slit an artery. Okay, well, I'm not gonna fucking move. If they tell me to keep my shoulders down, I'm going to do it. Terry Funk is trying to fucking wiggle himself free, which, by the way, you're not wiggling out of a rope in a fucking, Hollywood movie. You're in barbed wire. Like there's no wiggling out of barbed wire. Like no. that shit is razor sharp. It's chicken wire.
Well, that's why
they don't have it that much.
I'm not personally into the CZW and the GCW and stuff, but ECW and watching two professionals like this, even though they're doing incredibly dangerous stuff that could get you actually hurt, which I'm not a fan of in pro wrestling, but they're doing it at a perfect scale with a great storytelling match.
Yeah.
And, Born to be Wired is one of Sabu's best matches. And Terry, because Terry had such a great ECW career, that was a phenomenal match, and Sabu had a lot of great matches like that. Going back and watching some stuff, and now, like I said earlier in the episode, all sorts of people are putting out all sorts of old matches of him. He had a match with Cactus, and I think it was '94, and I forget what the event was called, but they were at a casino, and they end up spilling out onto the casino floor. And it's so fun to watch. And Cactus and it ends with Sabu doing the leg drop with the chair and beating Cactus and then moonsaulting to the table after. And it's a really good match. But
I want to watch this.
We're talking about how much of an innovator. I think he might be. You got Sandman. I think he kind of owns the kendo stick, right?
Yeah.
Triple H is the sledgehammer.
Yep.
Dudley's are the tables. I think we might have to give Sabu the steel chair. Because he was the first guy to jump off the chair, to use the chair as a prop, run from the one turnbuckle, fucking position himself off the chair, and then do that little leg drop thing under the turnbuckle. And that was an innovative move for the time. And that's something that he stuck with the whole time. He always did that shit.
Remember when he did it to Cena on the announce table?
Yeah.
That clip has been going viral because Sabu was asked one time, it's like, well, what do you think of John Cena? Because you got to work with him really when people started getting sick with him. And he's like, you know what? Fuck those people. Because John was the type of guy, we knew he was going over, but he's like, I want to try to do what I can for you. So what do you need me to do? Like, he had no problem doing that, that spot for Sabu.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that match, the Vengeance match, the lumberjack thing was weird.
Yeah.
They should have just let Cena and Sabu go at it. And there was kind of more like shit going on with the lumberjacks than it was them.
Yeah.
But it was, and when did they only give him like 8 minutes from what I remember? It wasn't
It wasn't long, no.
Sabu did deserve a little better in that spot, in my opinion. But, it goes the way. I don't think he was booked that well in WWE or WCW. He's one of those guys that only Paul understood. But WWE, it was half the booking and half he was beat up.
Yeah. I mean, even when he got to TNA, like, if he worked with Abyss.
Great stuff in TNA.
All right.
I don't want to overshadow that. Great stuff in TNA. On and off for like about 10 years. And he had the Abyss match, but also he had a lot of good shit.
Well, and one of the things too, and you brought up the deal with AJ and Teddy Hart, right?
Yes.
So I want to say Sabu, because Sabu worked a ballpark. God, I can't even fucking say it. Sabu worked a match in Buffalo with AJ Styles one year. It was 2004. And it was Ballpark Brawl. Jesus fucking Christ. And Sabu had been advertised for a match with Raven for the TNA pay-per-view. This is back when TNA did pay-per-views on Wednesday night. That was their TV deal. They did $10 pay-per-views for 2 hours on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 for their first 2 years in existence.
8 to 10.
Sabu was going to wrestle Raven in a match called Hangman's Horror. Now, the original title of the match was because you know how Raven always called it like Clockwork Orange, House of Fun, and then they just called it House of Fun.
Yes.
So the original title for this match was Hangman's Horror, Gallows of Retribution. And it's basically, and the first...
This is Russo, right?
Yes. Okay.
Sounds like it.
So the first ever type of this match was in October of 2003. It was Raven and Vampiro. The rules of this match state you have to hang your opponent over the rope, and the match ends when your opponent passes out as they're hanging by their neck. So you have to hang your opponent. Their face has to turn fucking purple, and then you win the match. So Sabu and Raven, they had a big blood feud at the time, because Raven was poking fun. Because I think Raven learned a little bit under the Sheik too.
Yeah,
I don't think he was trained by the Sheik, but so Raven learned a little bit from the Sheik as well. And like they had this big blood feud. Raven won the first match, and they were going to do this match. Sabu was going to get the win back. Well, he hurt his back in a match with AJ Styles in Buffalo.
Yeah.
So they decided to, because Sabu was kind of hanging out with Sanjay Dutt because they were both being billed from India, even though everybody knew Sabu grew up in Detroit. So they were both hailed from Bombay, India. So Raven wrestled Sanjay Dutt in this Hangman's Horror match, and you knew Sabu was supposed to win when Sanjay got the win. So but Sabu had some really cool stuff. Like he had the stuff with Abyss. He teamed with Raven a little bit in TNA.
I remember a tag match.
The Monsters Ball match.
Yeah.
Monsters Ball was great. I remember because the EV2 stuff was actually better than the ECWE.
Yeah.
I will say that. And even though it was still like a rehash of stuff, they were kind of better in TNA. And it was a match with him and Rob tagging against Beer Money on an episode of Impact that I remember being really good.
Yeah.
Because, that was just – and they had really good chemistry.
Well, EV2 was it was Raven, Dreamer, Sabu, Rhino,
RVD.
and Stevie, right?
Yeah.
And RVD was kind of helping them.
Yeah, it was
And Mick too, right?
yeah, and Mick. It was their version of the ECW originals.
Yeah.
And it did to me it worked a little better. And they got a hard justice becoming hardcore justice was cool.
Yeah. I'll never forget like when Tommy Dreamer said that like he sprained his wrist or something like that. They were doing like a backstage promo with everybody from EV2, and he's like, you know, I sprained my wrist, and Raven's just like, just put ice on it, you big baby.
That's funny.
And he's like, yeah, thanks, Scotty.
You big baby. That's funny.
But yeah, Sabu was like, and you can't really overshadow Sabu's run in TNA because they did get it because they let him do like some of the hardcore stuff. He had the barbed wire match with Abyss because they had to conquer Abyss's fear of barbed wire.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you another thing. His last match in TNA in his original run, which was in 2006. He wrestled Samoa Joe at Lockdown 2006. And originally the match, like they had given Joe, or like they had taken the X Division title off Joe. They gave it back to Christopher Daniels. And they're like, all right, you're going to work Sabu. Sabu broke his arm. Okay. Sabu broke his arm. And he couldn't really do much, but he's like, don't worry, I'll still work the match with Joe. So they gave Joe the fucking X Division title back because they're like, all right, well, you at least get that because Sabu kind of fucked up our plan because Sabu took a booking he wasn't supposed to and broke his fucking. He knew he was going back to WWE anyway, or going to WWE. And the match wasn't necessarily great, but also too, Sabu really couldn't work with a broken arm. But some of the stuff he would do, like all the scars on his body, that's crazy glue. Yeah. Like instead of going to the hospital and getting stitches, he fucking lays on a table and fucking crazy glues his wound shut.
That's crazy.
To where, huh?
It's crazy.
Glue. But to where, like, now that's actually a common fucking practice.
Yeah.
Oh,
people
wow.
super glue their wounds shut all the time.
I do it at work. Yeah, I do it at work when I cut myself. I mean, and Sabu.
Well, if you go to the hospital to do it, they charge you $700.
Yeah. Well, that's why I just do it at the shop.
Yeah.
But Sabu kind of came up with that. He would be bleeding after his match and shit. And it was either the tape or he would just glue it. Because he was like a badass, man. He didn't want to miss time. He didn't give a fuck.
He didn't want to miss time either. Because back in those days, if you don't, especially in ECW, Heyman's not going to pay you if you don't work.
He might not even pay if you do work. So if you're not working, you're fucked.
Yeah. So like, but yeah, like that the whole crazy glue thing. Again, because I remember I cut my thumb at work last year, and I cut it open pretty good. And they're like, bosses are like, we'll take you to the hospital. I said, fuck that. I'm not paying $700 just to get it fucking glued. And then a buddy of mine's just like, I'll glue you here. I said, all right, cool. So he super glued me there, and I still have the scar from it, but it still worked. But yeah, like Sabu, like you said, he kind of invented that, and he was just because he was a daredevil.
Yep.
And the whole thing, like, there's no way he couldn't be in pain. Like, I'm surprised he was actually still able to walk with some of the stuff he did.
Yeah.
Because that was some hardcore shit.
Yes, it was.
Literally.
And that's what he's known for, man. He would put his body on the fucking line. And that's kind of his legacy.
That's why everybody loved him.
But he would put on the best show that he could for the fans. And it was always something different. It was always something different. He could switch it up like nobody's business, and he could always. It was unique to the time, and he made like when you talk about the pillars of ECW. But even if we were to do an ECW Mount Rushmore,
I was gonna bring that up.
he would have to be on it.
Yep.
How could he not? He's almost like him and Sandman are like the two guys butting heads to be face of the company. But I think he was a
And
better
Tommy.
wrestler. Tommy's the heart. I'll give Tommy that. Tommy's the heart of the company. He's on Mount Rushmore. He's the heart. I don't know if he was the face. I think he was the heart of the company.
Yeah.
I think either Sabu, RVD, or Sandman was the face.
Yeah. You know, Living Dangerously 98, it was Sabu versus, I believe, Sandman. Sabu, I think, was late to the building. And like he had just gotten there by the time his match was starting.
Yeah.
And he didn't have time because he was opening the show, I think. Or he was, but he was late getting to the building. And he didn't really have enough time to change into his gear.
Yeah.
So what they did was they actually had Rob go out, and Rob had to wrestle later in the night. I forgot who he wrestled, but he had to go out there because they put him. Heyman's just like, well, Rob, why don't you go out? Well, Mr. Rob Van Dam, sir, why don't you go ahead? You dress like Sabu, and until Sabu can get his fucking gear on, why don't you go ahead and pretend to be Sabu in that? And by the way, they knew it was him.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah. So they knew it was Rob, but Rob went out there. He had the orange genie pants, genie type pants on.
Yeah.
Which were actually Sabu's tights. And he went out there and wrestled like the first like 5-10 minutes of the match until Sabu got his gear on and went.
Fucking amazing. And RVD, that's why hearing from RVD and Taz throughout this whole thing has been really sweet, and both their messages were, because Taz and Sabu notably did not get along, just like Triple H and Rock did not get along. But sometimes the best rivalries come from guys that don't get along. And that's just how it has historically gone sometimes. And when they really have that chemistry in the ring, but they just don't outside of the ring, sometimes that still makes for magic inside of the ring. And that's how Taz and Sabu were. They were never great friends, but that rivalry almost
respected each other.
Like, that captures ECW into a rivalry. That's probably, it's not the top rivalry of either guy's careers only, and it is. If you ask me who Taz's greatest rival is, I'm saying Sabu. And Sabu, you could throw an RVD in there. You know, you could throw a couple other. You could even maybe throw a Terry Funk in there, even though they just had some matches.
Well, didn't him and Mikey have like a pretty good string of matches too?
Yeah, and him and Shane Douglas too.
Yeah,
but
Sandman.
Yeah, but I will say that him and Taz was the feud that kind of made ECW.
Yeah,
and you had other ones like Raven and Sandman and stuff, but it was really, you know, Sabu and Taz. And so to hear from, and RVD, that was like a really good friend of his.
Yeah.
And they made magic together, those two. And if you ask either one of them who their favorite to work is, it's the other one. Yeah. And RVD, they just both had such great chemistry. But Sabu, he brought a lot out of people. And he could put on a very good fucking match. Yes, it was crazy and the style was weird. But in the world of ECW, when you still stand out, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And people are lighting tables on fire, putting them through that. They're jumping off of banisters. They're fucking you got hot chicks showing their boobs.
Then getting put through tables.
And then getting put through tables. How do you be different from all that? Well, he's jumping off the chairs and he's using his body as a weapon. All these other guys are just using weapons. He's using his fucking body as a weapon. And he's not a big guy to be doing that. So it's just badass stuff. And it was a different style. And he is unique in that era. Like, that's when I say trailblazer, I mean it. He is somebody that knocked fucking doors down. And he never got the big WWE, the chance to really wrestle in front of 80,000 and fucking tear the house down. He did big crowds, especially for ECW. And, you know, he was a part of that with WWE.
Well, he was part of that 8-man tag.
At WrestleMania, he did. Yeah, my bad. So he did get to do that.
which
But
by
not at his prime is what I'm
right.
saying.
But
Him and Taz, you know, that should have been a thing like a WrestleMania.
oh, I 100% agree.
Imagine him in the Attitude Era just mixing it up with some of those guys.
Yeah, did he
Yeah.
do that episode of Raw where ECW was invited to be part of the Hammerstein Ballroom?
Yeah, he fell off the R. Or was that another show?
No, I think that was that. I just can't remember who he wrestled.
I don't know if he wrestled, but he fell off the R. That's like one of the
Well, yeah, because him and Taz, like,
that was one of the biggest things about that is that he was going to jump off the R on everybody, but he like kind of tripped up because that was a hard thing to balance on.
yeah,
The big R for the RA and the W.
yeah, which is why they got rid of that stage like not that long after. Now, and here's the thing about his WWE run, and he got to wrestle at WrestleMania. He was so on the outs with the company, I think, at that point, to where Vince McMahon kept telling him, was like, the only reason why you're still here, pal, is because we want you to be the one to induct Eddie Farhat into the Hall of Fame. Like, after he gets inducted, you're fired. And lo and behold, a month after he was after the Hall of Fame, they did a month after the Hall of Fame, they did a couple of things where they were still working with that new breed.
Yeah.
And
that was a moment though.
Yeah. And then after that, that's when he got fired. But I'll tell you what was funny.
The WrestleMania match was fun. And then the ECW originals going, I know you could have made young guys, but those guys got their time to shine finally, and they deserved it.
Well, they won the Extreme Rules match the few days later because they did the Extreme Rules.
I know, but I'm talking about the WrestleMania match.
Yeah.
And like Brock Lesnar winning all the time, I understand, like, oh, this other guy should have won. Maybe I get it. You could have made Marcus Corvan and a couple other guys, but those ECW originals deserve that moment.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they got
it. Yeah. And like the new breed, they got their win back a few days later on ECW when they did the 8-man tag team Extreme Rules match where Sabu actually took the fall because he took one fucking hell of a pounce through the table from Corvan to where like he sold it the next week. He wrestled with a neck brace on.
You know, old Van Vliet, who does the interviews.
Yes.
Had Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Anderson, Kennedy on. And the title of the video is The Biggest What If in Wrestling. And a lot of people look at Mr. Kennedy as that. Marcus Corvan is right there in that fucking category, man.
Yep.
That dude was a stud that could have been in a main event anywhere in front of so many people. That guy had it. And I understand the whole family thing. And I'm not talking about the departure in a negative way or anything. You guys sometimes work is work, but sometimes, you know, reality is reality and you got to go deal with shit.
And that's one of the things I will never give that man as much as I call Ricky Steamboat a cuck for, you know, listening to his wife.
Yes.
Here's the difference. Marcus Corvan's sister died. All right. And left I believe it was 3 small children. Marcus Corvan became the uncle and became basically because his sister left this man her children, and instead of being on the road all the time and leaving them under somebody else's care, he's like, you know what, I'm gonna be the man for him. I'm gonna be their uncle because he had money because he played 5 years in football.
Yeah,
and he won no, he didn't win a Super Bowl, but he was at like a couple of them, and he made. In my opinion, I will never shit on that man.
That's a real
on that
man
doing that because that is a real man. Yeah. Again, I might shit on Ricky Steamboat, but the difference is Bonnie Steamboat is still alive, unfortunately.
Okay, come on,
come on.
Joking. I just have to say that. Don't argue it.
Yeah,
you joke, but yes, one.
That better not be the short.
No. I can't believe you called him a cock. That was hilarious.
I won't make it a short if
make the cuck part a short. Make me call it Steamboat a cuck.
I don't know. But Marcus Corvan is one of the biggest what ifs because he had all the talent in the fucking world.
Yeah, and
that pounce was such a fun finishing maneuver. So, but Sabu, his legacy and his career speaks for himself. let's get a couple of final thoughts going here, gentlemen.
Yeah. Well, he's one of those guys to where, you know, you can even say like, well, what if he would have been given bigger runs in the bigger companies? Those weren't his style. He liked the Japanese style. He liked the ECW style.
Yeah, but if WWE would have just let him be himself, and he's even said that, they wouldn't let me be myself, and they tried to make me talk. That's the two things that I should have. You got to let me be myself in the ring, and you can't let me talk. And they wanted to do the opposite. They wanted to police, and because you know how they are, and they're still like this to the day. We have our style. You either adapt to our style, or you get the fuck out. And whether you like it or you don't like it, I'm just stating it as what it is. And that's how they've always been. Like, look at Penta now. Look at the stuff he's doing compared to what he was doing in AEW. Whether you think it's better or worse, it's different. And because it's
the Penta presentation
has been
like
great.
him coming out to the ring is very good.
But,
it's just what they're doing as far as his win and loss record.
Yeah, but the book, and we'll get on that, and if we ever do a breakdown again. But we'll
get
do
a breakdown at some
yeah,
point.
of course.
Well, I mean, we will. It's just we're old farts and
Yeah,
We're busy.
Yeah,
but you know,
Busy and lazy.
Thing one day. but right now.
Well, I don't know. I just called Ricky Steamboat a cuck, so
he's already in fucking wrestling jail. No, but Sabu, he would have if they would have plucked him away, if he would have went to WWE in '95 and he would have been there for the dawn of the Attitude Era. Holy shit. He of course he would 100%. He could have put on great matches with like Mick Foley. I'm thinking like Road Dogg, Billy Gunn. He could work Al Snow. Like there's so
Undertaker.
Him and D'Lo could have had an interesting program. Him and Taker would have been an interesting fun.
Well,
thing.
here's
him
one.
And Kane, like him flying himself to Kane. Like that would have been fucking awesome.
Him and Shamrock, him and Blackman. Because imagine Blackman hitting him with the sticks, and then Sabu whacking him with a barbed wire chair.
Yeah, dude. Like that would have been insane. He could have helped make the Attitude Era and been a star in it.
Him and JBL would have beat the shit out of each other.
They could have. Him and Stone Cold would have been an interesting. They never squared up in ECW, did they?
No, because Austin only had like 3 matches, I think.
Yeah.
But he's an original Heyman guy, so.
But it would have been that could have been interesting. I think him and Rock could have been interesting.
Yeah, even him and Triple H.
Thank you, Liverpool. We appreciate you.
Appreciate that, buddy.
But yeah, him in the Attitude Era, and even if they would have brought him in Ruthless Aggression, even though I don't want to sacrifice the TNA run because I do like his stuff in TNA. But even if he could have him and Jeff Hardy.
By the way, that's one of my buddies.
But in WWE, they would have burned the house down too, and a couple of him and Matt Hardy would have been fun.
Yeah,
a lot of guys in both eras. He could have put on great, but Attitude Era especially. Sabu, because Sabu had a great career, and yes, the feud with Taz came later. But 94 and 95 Sabu was probably the best.
Can you imagine him and Bob Holly beating each other up?
Oh my god! They did it in ECWE, right?
I don't know if they ever had a 1-on-1, but I know they had.
They replaced him with Bob Holly, right? At the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah,
they fucking dude. That's an ECW fan. A one-night stand were great pay-per-views. I get to buy December to Dismember and support fucking ECWE and really try to buy it on this vision. And I get the worst pay-per-view of all time. And I pay to see Sabu in an Elimination Chamber match, which sounds fucking fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
He is built for a match like that. And we have him beat up at the pay-per-view, so it's not even advertised beforehand. You think he's going to be there, and then we have him beat up backstage, and you get Hardcore Holly instead.
Yeah.
Like that was such a fuck you to ECW.
Imagine Sabu and Crash Holly teaming together in the Attitude Era.
That would have been great.
Like that would have been one of those like Sabu doesn't talk, and you got Crash going, "Come on! Like we got to do this. We got to do this."
Been a great odd couple pair.
Yeah. Like there's always a lot of what ifs. Another thing I do have to mention. XWF. or not XWF, XPW, the company owned by the porn stars.
Yeah.
Sabu was their champion for a couple of years. Okay.
Wow.
And he had, because he got to work, because they would bring in guys, because they couldn't afford to pay guys all the time.
But what do you think was the best Sabu? Because like I said, the Daz stuff, and all the way until he eventually left. Late 90s, he was great there too. But I think 94, 95 Sabu was almost unbeaten. I think that's the peak of his career.
I would say between 94 and 97, because those were the best ECW years, in my opinion.
Okay.
But yeah, like that XPW stuff when he was there, and he got to work with Terry Funk, he got to work with Chris Candido, Shane Douglas. New Jack came in and did stuff with him, because that was another place that New Jack can be New Jack and not have to worry about getting arrested.
Because he was the NWA ECW champion too, right? Before the whole Shane Douglas belt throw.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like his first ECW title reign.
And it's fun. We talk about him tagging with RVD. He tagged with Taz too, the Tasmaniac.
Yeah.
They had a tag team a little bit. They tagged together.
They worked with Benoit and Malenko a few times.
And Chris Benoit, not that, I mean, I gotta preface anything, to try to, save his feelings, but great in-ring worker. One of his very few fuck-ups is tossing Sabu on his head.
Yeah.
And he really fucked Sabu up. And that was terrible. And he doesn't do shit like that. Benoit worked stiff, but he didn't hurt people.
No.
And he fucking hurt Sabu. He tossed him right on his fucking head.
Yeah, that backdrop, like that was the worst fucking backdrop.
And like a rare mistake from a great technician.
Yeah.
Because you go back and watch it, you're like, holy shit. And a lot of Sabu's big injuries are televised, which is crazy.
Yeah, which is just that. I think that's a FU from Heyman.
No, I mean, you got to videotape the product.
But yeah, so Sabu was definitely, one of a kind. Not to take from RVD's theme song, but
he was.
Yeah.
And he truly, like that Mount Rushmore, he has to be on there. I would say the Mount Rushmore of ECW is Sabu, Sandman, Raven, Dreamer. I know I'm missing the Dudleys and I'm missing important factors, but to me, that's the four that is the core of the company.
Sabu, Taz,
Nice.
Sandman,
And
Raven.
RVD doesn't make it.
If you could put a fifth person on Mount Rushmore, I'd put RVD.
Because they had a lot of great talent, and
Yeah.
Douglas was a fixture for them for a long time. They really, I mean, that was their top heel. Even if you're a Douglas fan or not, you kind of have to accept it if you're an ECW fan. He was on the program a lot. Even when he was injured, he was the fucking champion.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sabu, to me, my final thoughts, complete legend. One of the greatest ECW guys ever. I think the face of the company and the best. To me, he's the best ECW wrestler of all time. And when you're talking like the conversation of the greatest, the GOAT, I mean, it's a little harder, but he is an innovator, and he's one of the guys that people studied his tape and learned from him. And a lot of the shit you see now, extreme stuff and just the acrobatics, they learned a lot of that shit from Sabu.
Yeah.
He was the fucking man. And I do have a little bit of a fun story with him to wrap this up. Well, I'll let you give your final thoughts first, Eric.
Absolute legend, ECW original. He was ECW original. Classic matches with RVD, Taz, Sandman. He changed the hardcore game.
Yes.
But
Now-
one last, or I don't even know how to do it. Yeah.
He was the man. We got to meet him at a convention, and it was phenomenal. I got to meet Rey Mysterio there, but seeing Sabu kind of popped me. I was excited to see Sabu. Now, when you're talking about the Mary Joanna, the Mary Jane, King Cannabis, a lot of people,
Which actually is what Sabu actually called himself.
a lot of people,
All due respect.
indulge. Some people don't, and it's legal in a lot of places. It's not in Pennsylvania, but I was at a convention.
Still?
Yeah, I think it's decriminalized or whatever, but I don't know. I don't think it's legal. And Sabu was there with the genie at the time. She was still with us as well. R.I.P. to both. And he was there, and he had his little desk, and I walked right up to him, and I'm like, "Hey, Sabu." He's like, "Hey, kid, how you doing?" And we started sparking up a conversation, and then I noticed right next to him is this big fucking jar of pot, dude. Like this big ass jar filled to the brim with weed. And I just looked at him, and I was like, and I looked at the jar, and I looked at him, and like, that looks like some good shit, Sabu. And he's like, "Yeah, it is, kid." And then he put his hoodie, he had a hoodie next to him, and he covered it because he didn't want to get caught. And that's one of my favorite stories of meeting a wrestler. And it was hilarious. And then I took a picture with, and I don't know where it is. I was going to try to post it up before the episode, but I think it's on one of my old phones. But I got to take a picture doing this, and this was before I lost some weight. So this is 330 pounds of Hummer, my fat ass fucking, titties to the sky. But Sabu was, he was sweet enough to do the picture, do the pose, and it was fun as fuck. I mean, I think he got $20 out of me, which, he deserved it. He's a superstar. I didn't mind giving him the money. And it was really fun meeting him, and RIP, because he was like I was just a fan. Some guys, see that, they get annoyed by that. Some guys, are really cool. He was one of the really cool ones, and he was a really nice guy. And in that encounter and everything I've ever heard about him, he seemed like a great guy. R.I.P. Sam.
And even when he did, like last year, when he no-showed his Indie Hall of Fame speech.
Oh, in such a legendary way.
All right, so I'm just going to tell this story real quick. I wasn't there, but like from what I heard, he was at the hotel. He was upstairs. He was smoking. He was doing the, what he said. And they called him and they said, "Hey, it's time. You got to come down and get your thing." Okay, cool. He gets up to go, and then he's like, "What the fuck am I doing? I can't take my weed down there with me." So he went back into his hotel room, called Brett Lauderdale, who was running the thing, the Indie Hall of Fame, and he goes, "You know what? Just mail me the thing, or bring it up here when you're done." Like, I don't think I'm going to come down.
It's hilarious.
And they asked him, they said, "Why did you ditch out on such an honor?" He goes, "I just changed my mind. I didn't feel like going downstairs."
And a long walk.
And they asked Brett Lauderdale, they're like, "How do you feel about that?" And he's like, "It's Sabu." Like, it's okay. Like, that's how he is. And that, again, that makes my point earlier to where it's just like, it could be anybody else. Fucking anybody else does that, and they're damned to hell. Sabu was such a nice guy, such a lovable guy that he got away with it.
And I don't want to, like, the theme of this episode be portraying him as a flake either, because he did make a lot of bookings and worked his whole fucking life and made a lot of shows. So I don't.
But when you get older in age, it's just like, do I really want to fucking do this?
Yeah, and you're saying it in a sweet way, and
that's what I do.
You're comparing it to how good of a person he is.
Yeah.
So it's not meant in any, but I don't want to. I'm not like, he's not a flake that misses a bunch.
Yeah.
He's not Conan,
he's not Conan, taking the money and then not showing up.
Yeah.
He's just basically just like, "Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it, but I'm good where I am right now."
Yeah.
He was always about the fans.
Yeah.
That's why he put on the show he did.
He was a phenomenal performer that always put his body, he sacrificed himself for the industry.
Yeah.
And that any guy that does that is a legend in my book. R.I.P. Sabu. Next. One last, yeah. Even though we said that like 4 of them ago. But next week, ladies and gentlemen, we will be doing
boys and girls, children of all ages.
A 64 team bracket. We're going to be doing theme song warfare, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be doing a tournament where me, Doug, Eric, and Danielle will be returning to the show next week. and we are all going to be voting on what theme song, and we're going to be pitting theme songs against each other. Maybe Edge's versus Cena on this day. And we might get into some Randy. I hear voices. We're gonna compare all the greatest theme songs of all time: WWE, WCW, TNA, maybe even a little AEW.
I wish we could play them, but we can't.
We definitely can't play the ECW ones because they were all copyrighted and illegal.
I don't even think we can technically sing them. Like maybe the wrestling theme songs we can kind of get away with, but still, like even just singing them, like they can still try to nail you for copyright. No. That's why, like, you actually like songs. You can't actually sing songs on TV without paying the people that wrote the song. Like it's an actual thing now. How Rock used to be able to get away with singing stuff back in the day. You can't do that shit anymore.
You need to quit being a fucking narc. But I think if we do a line, we'll be okay. We'll see everybody next week for that. Why don't you tell the ladies and gentlemen a little bit more about Batman and SpongeBob?
Okay. Second match of the quarterfinal round. Batman versus
SpongeBob.
Batman versus SpongeBob. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody's going to be around for that, I think. And
should be.
Yeah, well, you were supposed to be last week too, but anyway.
Little sub diss in there. There we go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, but it's the number 1 seeded Batman the Animated Series versus the number 14 seeded SpongeBob SquarePants. If Batman wins this and the Simpsons wins their first round match, and that's going to be the semifinal. If SpongeBob wins, who the hell knows? But Rugrats has already advanced. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. We're in the Elite 8 action of this tournament. Next tournament coming up that we're going to be doing starting in July. That's going to be fun. We're going to get more into that. We're going to get more into that tomorrow. I'll explain more of the rules because we are going to start doing the recruiting for the thank you very much. We are going to start doing the recruiting to get people to run divisions in the next tournament. The prize for that will be $100 Amazon gift card. And by the way, you don't have to do anything except for just say you're in and that you'll run a division. So it's easy. We do the drafting for you. So you might end up screwed, but that's another story. But yeah, so that's the next tournament. But tomorrow night, it's going to be a big one. Batman and SpongeBob. SpongeBob's already beaten 2 cats. Now can he beat a bat?
Right. And we'll see everybody next week. Eric, I love you.
Eric, you'll take care of the sports, please.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Hi, guys. You guys.
All right. And make sure you don't screw me over like last time when I said I was talking about Maven. And I said that Maven, I was like, no offense to Maven, I was saying, and I did a very good, preface before I got into my statement. And then at the end, I said, Maven sucks. And that's the only thing you fucking clipped. And I got a mean comment, and I'm okay with it. I don't give a shit. But
yeah, the guy's just like, oh, yeah, like you did a lot in your career.
It's like, I'm actually established in my career, motherfucker. I'm not a wrestler, but I'm doing well. And so...
I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
No, it's okay. I don't give a shit. But it was funny. All that was like the clips, like 3 seconds. It's just Maven sucks.
And by the way, it got over 1,000 views.
Which, there you go. But I did say good things about him beforehand. But so
it's always the ones that you don't expect to get the most views.
So don't screw me this week. But we'll see everybody next week. I love you, Eric.
Later,
boys.
Bye-bye.